Okay, so here we go. Arithmetic versus geometric. This is a review for the final, and these are coming from the sequence and recursion review, and we're also going to be covering shifted geometrics and loans and investments. Okay, so back to here. Arithmetic and geometric are two different types of sequences. Common difference and common ratio are the two terms that go with that. Now I'm writing the formula here. U0 equals 2. U sub n equals U sub n minus 1. Do you remember that that and that are like two of your numbers in your sequence? This is any random number in your sequence, and this is the one right in front of that. So what it's saying is, if I take any random spot in the sequence, I can get that by using the number in front of it plus 2. Did I just do the arithmetic or the geometric one? I just did the arithmetic one. What if I wanted to make it the geometric one? I just simply change it to what? Times 2. And what is this 2 if I just am multiplying by it? It's not geometric. I mean, it's called the what? Common ratio. That number is the common ratio. Okay, now that's a formula that you could put into your calculator, but we basically spent some time on this when you were just learning the basics of it, but pretty quickly we moved up to, instead of like find the fifth term, we pretty quickly moved up to, here's a big scary looking formula for a loan for a $100,000 house. And it would say something like this. Do you remember this type of formula? What does the O5 stand for in the context of a loan for your house? Yes? Yes, but it's called something in the context of a loan. It wouldn't call it that. We'd call it the something something. The interest rate. That's the interest rate. Why is there a divide by 12 in there? Yes? It's per month. And the last thing is that 1200. What is that? That's what you're putting into it. That's called the what in the context of this situation. It's not a down payment. That only happened once. It's just called, nope, the principal's the original amount. Thanks for remembering that number, but that's that name. That's called principal. This is called the payment. Just simply payment. You have a $1,200 payment. It's going to be paying off your loan. And the divide by 12 tells you it's paying it off monthly. Every month you're going to pay $1,200. Now a typical harder question on this would be, put it into the calculator and figure out how long it took you to pay off the house. What you're looking for then is for your loan value to go down, 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 down. Eventually you get to 0 and in fact turn negative. If it turns negative and it's like negative $64, what does that mean? They owe you 64. Very good. All right, so let's do this. Now to put this in the calculator, everybody grab your graphing calculator. I'll pause for a second while people borrow one from me. Okay, I've got my calculator up on the screen. If I hit the y equals, I can tell if I'm in the right mode. Mine's in the normal y equals kind of mode. So I have to go change modes. I go to mode. I go to the fourth thing down here, and it is function mode versus SEQ for sequence mode. I hit enter. I'm in sequence mode. I go back to the y equals. And for most problems, we are going to use 0 for our start there. U sub 0. On some of your problems, you'll say U sub 1. Why? Because if they ask you for the fifth term, it's better to use U sub 1 as your starting point instead of U sub 0. U sub 0 is great for all the other like real-world problems. Now, if you haven't already got this in your calculator like I do, you may want to put that in. U sub n minus 1. It needs the parentheses like that. And now I'm going to change it to context here was a $100,000 loan at 5%. Go over here and say 0.05. And I'm going to say divide by 12. And then end parentheses. And then say I'm making payments of minus 1,200. And my loan amount was for $100,000. You do not have to have a parentheses there because your calculator knows that divide happens before subtract. So you do not need parentheses. You can have parentheses, but you do not have to. Yes, sir. U is the U that's above the 7. It's blue. It's above the 7. You can look on the screen there where it's 0.05 divided by 12 minus 1,200. No, I'm saying on the white part of the screen, way to the right there. Okay, minus 1,200. All right, now, the next thing, everybody go to the table settings. Make sure your table's not like mine, and mine's starting at 90. That's not going to help me. I want it starting at 0 so I can see the beginning of my table. Table start 0. Then I'm going to the table. And I can see my loan is getting paid off. See, it starts at 100,000, and after 10 years, it's 84,000. Wait a minute, something's wrong with that. What I just said was wrong. After 10 years, it's 84,000. False. Thing. Yes? That's after 10 months. Good. Because this problem is monthly, because it has to divide by 12. So every one of these is a month. So our $100,000 loan is getting paid off. Does that make sense that it's getting paid off? We're giving them $1,200 every month, so it should start to pay off. Okay, so this is right. And now that 84,000, I just want to remind you, it's not really 84,133. If you want the exact value, arrow over on top of it, it's 84,133.11471. In other words, I know it's only off by some pennies, but sometimes the problems are that picky. 84,133 and 11 cents. Okay. Banks actually care about pennies? Yeah. If you've got 100,000 customers and they all short you a penny, that's $10,000. Just a penny. It's 10 grand. If you lost a penny every day from each of your customers, 100,000, you move it over one decimal place. Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking a dime when I was saying a penny. I'm sorry. You're right. 2 decimal places. It'd be $1,000 for every 100,000 customers. Ugh, those numbers can get scary. Most banks nowadays are big. A lot of the big banks will have thousands, even millions of customers. You take 1,000,000 times a penny, no matter if it's only a penny, it still adds up to ridiculous amounts of money. Did you know that there's 2 major banks that made over $1 billion just on fees, like their little fee that they charge for being overdraft? Like, oops, you wrote a check for a little more than you had, we're charging you a little fee. Billion with a B, $1 billion for those because they have so many customers. All right, anyway, let's move on. I just wanted to point out, if you hover over that spot here, you'll get an exact answer versus if it's not hovered over that, you don't get the exact answer. Okay, let's move on. When is it paid off? Somebody arrow down a bunch. I'm going to cheat and go table settings. Try to find where it ends. No, where did it end? So everybody go to table start 103 and we'll cheat and get there a lot faster than he did. Okay, apparently it's 72. I'll find out in a moment. All right. My calculator is taking forever. It does have it divided by 12 in the problem, so it's yes, we are quite a bit paid off here. We've got an extra 35,000. So yeah, I think you guys are right. So what did you think it was? 70 something? I'm going to go to my table settings and change the table start to 72. Okay, quiet please. All right. I'm going to just go to 70. Now here's the important part. If you're having an issue with your calculator, I want you to be able to compare it with somebody else so that we can get it fixed, because this is going to be quite a few points on the test of being able to manipulate your calculator correctly here. All right? So I'm pairing you with the people straight across from you. Okay, if you don't have somebody straight across, you go kind of diagonal. You two are going to be front and back, and then you guys are across, and you guys are across from each other. Could you look at that's what I just paired you up with somebody for. Would you look at their y equals screen? Compare their y equals screen to your y equals screen. Okay, I got quite a few people who have mistakes in their y equals screen. It should again say u sub n minus 1 times 1. Uh-oh. Mine says minus, and it should say plus. The kids who copied mine off the board were right in that they copied what I said, but there should be a plus. Sorry about that. 1 plus 0.05 divided by 12. And now you're saying it'll get paid off earlier, huh? Or no, later. 100 and something? Now you'll be right. You just give it enough time and you were right. Just kind of like your person whose fashion is 10 years too far forward. Someday you'll be totally fashionable. You just keep wearing the same clothes. Because eventually it comes around. All right, back to table. Table settings, going to change that to be 102 apparently. This will be close enough then. And so I'm looking at wherever this thing turns negative, that means I got the thing paid off. Okay, so what does a typical question say? When does it get paid off? That's one question. Here's another question that's even tougher. How much total did you pay? Well, if you know it took 103 payments to pay it off, would you agree you paid 103 times 1,200? We know the payments, they're 1,200. Times by 103, that's the answer, isn't it? But with one little tweak. They have to pay you back that negative $586.30. Because when you made that last payment, are you okay with them just keeping that 500 bucks? No, they owe you 500 bucks. You want it back, and that's what would happen in the real world. The bank would actually mail you a check. It's illegal for them to just. All right. I think it's a 586, isn't it? Okay, I'm going to arrow over it. Oh my gosh, that was a 0 with a slash through it, not an 8. My bad. Negative 506.38 or 32. So you would go 103 payments times 1,200, but then subtract off the 506. That's how you find the total you paid. Now, we were supposed to be paying 100,000. I guarantee you that amount will be much more than 100,000. Why? Interest. Because you thought you were paying 100 grand, but then by the time the interest was done, you probably paid like 130,000 or something like that. Does anybody have the exact number? 123, I'm going to round it, about 123,000, and that 23,000, that's money that the bank made on interest. So if you can pay your house off early, you won't be paying as much interest. You'll be paying closer to the actual price of your house. All right, so next step, long run value. This is what we'd spent like an extra 3 days on, and I should be able to teach it to you in 5 minutes. All right, everybody put this equation in your calculator. Everybody get back to your y equals screen. And we're going to have a starting value of, instead of 100,000, we're going to have a starting value of 10, just to make it way simpler. Okay? Then, go back to this, and long run value, if you think about this, if I make it go up by 5%, and then I add something each time, like plus $50, for instance. Now, let's just say $5. Let's go with 5. There. 1 plus 0.05 divided by 12 plus 5. You know what? One more thing. Go in and hit the DEL key. We don't need this monthly thing in there. Typical problem on this does not have monthly. Just divide it, DELing until I got 5% increase and then plus 5. Just use your big brain for a second. If it goes up 5% every year and you keep adding to it, is it going to have a limit? No, it's going to just keep going up forever and ever. So a problem that has long run value is always going to have a minus in it. Why would that be in the real world? Because you're spending. A lot of retirees figure that they should just spend about 5% of their income and just always only spend 5% of the money they have in the bank. So if they have this big set of $1 million in the bank, if they just spend 5% of it every year, it'll last a long time because it's growing at the same time. So this might be a situation where you're spending 5%, but you're adding 5 every year. Maybe it's in the context of thousands of dollars. All right, so how do I know the long run? If I started with 10 bucks, it's dropping 5% every year, but you're adding 5 bucks every year. Then you go to the table, and I'm going to go over to my table settings and look at like spot number 25, because by then I bet you all have seen that it's leveling off. Going to my table now. It's still rising. It's rising pretty slowly. 83, 84, 85, but it's still going up, right? Somebody's saying that at 100 it's still rising. So I'm going to go out to table settings of 100 and see in the long run. It's obviously a long ways down the table. I bet you it's going to level off though. Checking 100 spots down the table. Oh, 99, 99, 99, 99. Look at that. It looks to me like it's still rising a smidgen, but if it's got all those 99s, I bet it ends up at like 100. Well, there's a long run value. What do we start with? Here, go back to the y equals screen. Please copy this down quickly. I think you should be sitting closer. Right there, it's empty. So the question would be, what's the long run value of this? And I believe it's getting closer and closer to 100. Now, let me show you how you'd solve it if they didn't give you a calculator for this part. Let me write it down. I have u sub n equals u sub n minus 1 times 1 minus 0.05 plus 5. And they want to know what the long run value is. Okay, in the long run, this number and this number are going to be the same. And I don't know what they are, so I should call them x. X equals x times 1 minus 0.05, which by the way is 0.95, plus 5. That is an equation you can solve. You can either graph both sides of it, see what they cross, or you could subtract 0.95x, and that cancels that. 1x minus 0.95x is 0.05x equals 5, and then you divide by 0.05. And lo and behold, x equals 5 divided by 0.05 is 100. So bottom line is, 100 is the long run value. Couldn't you pretty much get a clue when it was saying 99.999? Yeah, it's pretty much 100. I'm going to give you another one like that. So let's say I had u sub n minus 1. It was growing, or was dropping at 20%. I was adding 25 bucks. What's the long run value? You can either do it on your calculator, fine with that, or you can do it algebraically. I'm fine with that. I think most people can calculate. But you have to know how to do it algebraically just in case. X equals x. 1 minus 0.2 is 0.8. It's really not that hard to do it algebraically. Now I just have to subtract 0.8x from both sides. 1 minus 0.8 is 0.2x. And those cancel. It's 25. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 0.2. I will admit that I would rather not have to do 25 divided by 0.2. But I think I can do the first thing to get the decimal out of there, multiply the top and the bottom by 10. 250 divided by 2. That's not that bad. Half of 250. 25. Can anybody with a calculator verify it was coming out about 125? Okay, good. So that's how you do it by hand or with the calculator. And that was the hardest concept we had in the first 2 chapters of this semester. All right. And that's probably only 1 or 2 questions are on long run values. So if you're like, I totally don't get the long run values, that's fine. There's like 67, 80, maybe 70 questions. You don't get 2 of them, it's not the end of the world. Okay, so that's another important thing to get on this, is if there's one concept, it's going to take you an hour to figure it out, probably not worth it. Because there's 70-some questions on the final. Now, if you like one concept is probability, well, there's like 25 questions in probability. But if it's one little probability type and you don't get that kind, it's not the end of the world. That's 70-some questions. You can get if you want. Yes. Scroll up. Yep. What's the name for those? This is saying that it's decay of 20%. Decay rate. Yes. All right. Or in the context of a bank problem, it would be like an interest rate. But if it's like a bank thing, it's always plus. In this case, we were spending our money, and we were spending 20% of our money, and then we were adding 25 every time. We'd eventually end up, keep adding the 25, keep spending the 25%, you end up with a bank balance of 125 bucks. Or maybe if this is in thousands, it's 125,000 bank balance. It's not that crazy for a retired person who's trying to live off of money they've saved their whole life. They do that kind of thing. They spend some percent of it, and then they try to add some back to it. How would they ever get any money? If they're an old person, they might get Social Security, so they can add that into the pile while they're busy spending 5% of the gun. All right. So there are good real-world applications. Now back to what did we just do? You just learned Unit 9 and Unit 10. Did I teach you every possible thing? No. But I taught you what I think is the hardest stuff. Some of the easier stuff, I'm sure you'll be able to get on your own. You can always look back at keys. It is okay to look at the keys. But for minimum, absolute minimum, over the weekend, you've really got to get at least 9 and 10 done. But since you have a weekend, it'd be really smart to get 11 done too, just so you give yourself more time. But it is your choice. I'm only assigning Unit 9 and Unit 10 the first Schoology quiz in each. Okay? Any questions? All right. I'm available in the mornings too, so if you're stuck on any of these, bring them in. Let me give you help. Also, we do have time left in class right this minute. You guys have almost 15 minutes left. This is not a good time. You just pack up your iPad. Okay, if you need to leave, then that's a different thing. But if you're staying here, then you should have your iPad out. You should be working on one of those Schoology quizzes. You can bring them up to me, ask me questions. Okay, that's all I got for the video for today.